And we're off. How's everyone doing this afternoon? Happy Sunday afternoon, everybody. It's the only clinical show clinically proven to be effective 93% of the time. You'd be amazed how many people have written me. Percentage of people who listen to the show who've said they've gotten really good things happening from listening to this. It's been 15 days since our last no-hitter. There are 286 players currently on the injured reserve list. That's exactly 11 teams worth. For perspective, only 10 teams are going to make the playoffs. The Cubs' record is 56-74. Their magic number is 17.5 for elimination. College football season begins for me this week on Thursday with UCF playing Boise State. Should be a great game in the Bounce House. These are the two teams on the short list to take over the missing spots in the Big 12. Mal is either short for malevolent or maligner. That's what it is. Where I live in Central Florida, you can't swing a dead cat without hitting somebody with COVID. In my neighborhood alone, there's over 30 families, including my own. Only 34 days of baseball remain. You got to make your move now. And you are in the dugout with me, Doug Boyle. How you doing? Honestly, me, I'm not doing that great. You know, a lot of the big things about baseball is just being excited about it. You know, and this year, with the Cubs being out, I don't actually have that for at least the last month of the season. Even when they weren't good, but still in it, I could do some things. And then this week, I get a lot of crap from people on our own site. I don't usually do this, but I'm going to give you two minutes of just things that need to be addressed. You know, things changed a lot this year. Last year, I talked about how hard it is to focus on this, which is relatively trivial when such big things are going on, like people dying and whatever. I lost broadcast partners because things that Americans should just agree on, like we want to get healthier from the flu or whatever. And there, if you go back through all my past podcasts, they've removed the ones where I was with Dan Gilbert at the beginning of the year, which are all the preseason predictions, which I wanted to go back and show you some of the ones that I was really gung-ho on. I mean, I had Ty France as my number 8 second baseman and the guy I was targeting because I thought it was the best deal, you know, but I can't do that because I don't. I guess I have my notes. I'll go through my notes because they're saved on Google Drive, and I'll find that, and we'll talk about that probably at the end of the season. But I'll tell you a story. I was a stockbroker, and I was a young one when I started, and you can't actually put in a trade until you pass the test and get certified by FINRA, and it takes a little bit of time because they do background checks and things like that. So there was this one Friday afternoon, me and 3 other guys took the test roughly at the same time, and this one Friday afternoon around 2 o'clock, my clearance came in. So I was allowed to go live on Friday, where the other 2 guys weren't allowed to go live until Monday of the next week. And so the elder stockbrokers in there saw this and said, you know, Fridays are relatively light, and we're going to take the day off because Doug can put in trades if someone calls in. Now, I never put in – I went to the class to put in trades, but the idea of you having a live line to the stock exchange is actually a little bit daunting the first time you do it. And they showed me how to put in a trade, but they didn't show me how to do what they don't want you to do, which is put in trades for other people, which what happened. Somebody called in. One person called in, bought 100 shares of Alabama Power and Light, which is a preferred stock. And I put that thing in, and I didn't know how to change it to the guy who that is the customer of. He wasn't my customer, but I was just the guy on the phone, and I could legally put in trades. So that trade went through, and I wound up getting a commission check for $7.97. Now, the other guy would have got a little bit more because he was higher up on the ladder, but you're not talking about a lot. He would have got about $10, $10.12, I think the number was. And then that guy never really spoke to me again, like I stole something from him. And I told him, I go, I'll pay you the $10. And I told him the story. I didn't know how to change it. In the class, they don't tell us how to do that because we're not supposed to do that. And from that, I have always had this saying, which says, I'm never going to jeopardize a friendship on matters under $20. There's a certain amount which is not worth it. The friendship matters more. And there's a lot going on here at the station. And I consider Lenny a friend. I consider Andrea a friend. And I'm not going to jeopardize that over dumb shit. And I even swore on my show, which is pretty rare. And I'm going to continue doing what I do that way. But when people start there's one gentleman who's lying about me. And the crazy thing about his lies is everything I say on my show is archived on Spreaker. Everything I say on the Monday night show is archived on YouTube. You can go find it if you think that thing really exists. But we're living in a world where people play fake sports and they get fake news and things can just be true for saying it. And it's just really awful. And that's what I do this for. When I talk to the people who left, the only thing that really struck with me is like, you know that the people that listen to you don't like you. And I said to them, like, there's a guy who really hates me. Like, he will literally send me hate mail where at the bottom it'll say something like, who do you like better, Josh Stelmont or, Dylan Flora. Or it's like, you just put this thing where you hate me. Like, that guy actually invited me to his fantasy football team. And I think that's part of like the person I am. I'm a likable person. I get along with people. I make a point to do that. And if you listen to those shows where I'm on the show with the gentleman who's lying about me, you'll see that in that show, I treat him very, very well. Anyway, there's a chance that this show will end at some point, probably at the end of the season, maybe not. And it's not because I don't like Lenny or I don't like Andrea. It's because I don't like being here. It'll be because there's other things going on in my life more a lot. But what makes it difficult is when you can be a fan and be nice to me. You can be a fan and disagree with me. But when you start making up stories about me, it takes away from my desire to be here. And that's just really one person. And he knows who he is. As a matter of fact, he actually names himself, malicious something. So, he's just who he is. But I just want to go through it for a second. I'm here. I'll make it through the end of the year. The plan was in the offseason, if you listen to last weekend's show, the last Monday night show, I did a show just with Merrill Harston. I was thinking in the offseason, because in the offseason, there's not hard facts you're talking about. You're talking about a lot of speculation. And it's a better show to be two people or more. And so I thought maybe I'd invite him to do a once a bi-weekly show or a once a month show. But anyway, let's get back to baseball. Sorry to waste 5 minutes of your life. This is weighing heavily on me. I choose to be here. I wish that the community was just, I don't know, more sane. I'm going to re-emphasize what I said last week. Don't save your fab. You only got, what is it? You got 34 days left. If you want a player, don't say, oh, I'm going to only spend 7 because that's all he's worth. If you want a player, spend 15, spend 20. The money you have left at the end of the season isn't really worth it. You do want to keep a little bit left so you're never without a player. The second thing is the real recap the playoffs. Chicago White Sox are up by 10. Tampa Bay Rays are up by 5. Houston's up by 6.5. That's all in the American League. The wild cards right now are Yankees in Boston. Oakland's 3.5 games back. Seattle and Toronto are behind them. In the National League, Milwaukee is up by 7. Atlanta's up by 3.5. San Francisco's up by 2. The wild cards are easily Los Angeles Dodgers. The Dodgers might win the division, but one of the Dodgers, the Giants are going to be one of the playoff teams because they're up by 11 and 13 out of the wild card, respectively. Cincinnati is pulled in the second spot with San Diego 2 game back. St. Louis and Philadelphia a little bit behind them. I guess you could count the Mets in it. And that's the only teams that are in the playoffs for the rest of the year. So in the other teams, expect there to be situations where players don't play or players play just because they're trying out things. It's not going to be standard baseball because they're not in it to win it. And these teams are the ones where people are going to try harder. I have this one thing that is, they're expanding rosters on December 1st, and they're not going to 40, they're going to 28. This is bad news in a lot of things, but it's really, really good news for fantasy baseball players for one reason. In normal years, every year up to this, I guess last year was that, but we didn't notice as much. You run into situations where players get injured in September, and they just sit on the bench and they don't go to the IL because they have 40 roster spots. You're going to see one of the great frustrations of fantasy baseball is not going to be there this year because of that, which I think is something to be happy about at least a little bit. There is this catcher conundrum in a league with 4 weeks to go, and catchers not being really any good. What do you do do you really care about replacing catcher? I have Mitch Garver in a league who's injured, and I'm thinking to myself, I can pick up somebody. I'm actually thinking of picking up Dom Nunez because of the 32 games that the Colorados have left. Sorry, they have 33 games left. There's 16 road games and 17 home games, so there's going to be a lot of Colorado scoring you can hit. But it's really not even worth it more than $1 or whatever, because what are you going to get from a catcher who's not Sal Perez, not the very elite 4 or so? You're going to get maybe a home run or two. Even the batting average drain that most of them will give you isn't going to be much. A few RBIs. I'm almost feeling like I should just leave Mitch Garver there and hope he comes back. Which brings me to the second part of the country room. This is a question that gets asked a lot. If you're in a 2-catcher league, can you leave a catcher slot empty? And that's an ethical question. And I feel I need to brush this because I feel like if I were to keep Mitch Garver and not play him because he's on the injured list, I might be breaking that same rule. Because the truth is, you should have to play every position that is rostered. And I know that in a lot of leagues, especially in a points league, if you're in a points league that's 2-catcher, matter of fact, points leagues should never be 2-catcher. Just the nature of the beast. But if you're in a points league that's 2-catcher, having a blank catcher spot where you're filling with somebody like a Dom Nunez or Elias Diaz or just kind of rudimentary catchers, having an extra pitcher is going to be much better for you. So it shouldn't be that. But I've had situations in the past where you'll run into teams where they'll play one catcher to get an extra pitcher on their team. And I said to him, I said, you've defrauded me. When you asked me to join this league, I said, what kind of league is it? And you said it was a 2-catcher league. And there's this team apparently not playing with 2 catchers. It's one of those things that the sites really can't enforce well, but it should be like that. If you're in a 2-catcher league, you should have to play 2 catchers. I can make a little bit of a adjustment for the injury part because there's just so many injuries and so many not good players, but I don't know what I'm going to do with that catcher spot. It's a deep league. It's a 15-team league where I'm in 4th place, and I don't think that I'm going to get $1 worth of fab picking up from those guys. We'll get to that more when we get to the catchers at the end. To recap me, just so you know, that I'm in 3 roto-style leagues. I'm in 1st in 1, I'm in 2nd in 1, and I'm in 5th in another one. Well, sorry, I'm in 4th in the other one. I just looked today. I tied for 4th. I made that spot because of the strikeout things. And like I said, that was the strategy was I'm going from 7 starting pitchers a week to 8 starting pitchers with 1 reliever because that will catch me up 6 strikeouts a week, which should net me 3 points. And every point counts this other thing. And that's the kind of thing you can look at. But that was what last weekend's was about. I'm in 2 head-to-head leagues. One, I'm in 2nd place. Oh, that 4th place league is a TFGBI. And to give you an idea how tough that thing is, they do the overall where you're up first of all 450 players. I'm in 4th place, tied for 4th, which means there's 3 teams ahead of us. And I'm in 64th place overall, ahead of, what is that, like 386 players, because my team has a lot of good teams in it. And so I just get that. And I really would like to come in at least 3rd, considering that I lost Luis Robert and Marcell Ozuna so early, a big high pick. So it's a fair showing, but I still have a chance of winning it. I could win it, but I need some help from other teams. I need some other teams to fade. And Jeff Zimmerman's who's first isn't fading. He's good. And then in the head-to-head leagues, I'm in second place in 1. There's a playoffs there. I'm in 6 in another. It's playoffs. The odd thing about head-to-head leagues is that there's 2 games left in the regular season because we play 22 games. It's a 12-team league. You play each 11 teams twice, 22 games. And I'm in 6th place, which puts me 3 points out of 3rd and 5 points out of 2nd. 9.5 points out of 1st. But one of the natures of head-to-head is who you play. And in my last 2 weeks, I'm playing the worst team and the second worst team. So I'm going to catch that up. I might even get a bye week. So I've done well, as I usually do. And I was a little worried because last year I've never had 2 off seasons in a row where I didn't place and make some money. And last year I didn't make any money, but then again, I only played in 1 league and didn't really care. So let's get started with the traditional recap. But I'll take a quick look over to see if anybody is seeing here. I do see that in Facebook there's a couple of names there, but their Facebook user and nobody in the general chat because I'm not on that stream right now. But returning this week, we saw Bobby Bradley of Cleveland return, Jordan Luplow of Tampa Bay return, Yasmani Grandal of Chicago, the White Sox return, Eddie Rosario returned for Atlanta, but has yet to start a game. Maybe he starts today. Pete Fairbanks has returned for the Tampa Bay Rays. Kevin Gausman's returned for San Francisco. Earlier today on Andrea's show, she was wondering who I was comparing to Gausman when I was talking about MVPs. And who I was comparing to Kyle Gibson on MVPs. And I was comparing Gausman to Gibson. And I was saying, like they're very similar numbers. I think Gausman's a better pitcher, but Gibson's life and performance is just a little bit worse. And I thought that he would be in the hunt for the American League Cy Young, but he's not an American Leaguer anymore. Minnesota's outfielder Byron Buxton has returned, and that's in that league that I'm in, 6th place. Byron Buxton just returned, and I expect Trout back for the playoffs, which should be pretty good for me. Thomas Nido out of Maitland Little League is back for the Mets, and with McCann out, he's going to be the starter in there. Josh Stalmont's back for the Royals. I don't know why I brought him up earlier. Carlos Rodon returned this week. Jose Alvarado, their reliever in Philly. Gio Urshela in New York with the Yankees. Yu Darvish, San Diego. Mookie Betts for the Dodgers. Alex Bregman returned for the Houston Astros, and that wasn't. I thought that'd be a bigger deal for most people, but it sort of went quietly. Johnny Cueto returned for San Francisco. I accidentally picked him up last week. He had an okay outing. And the two other guys that I wanted ahead of him because I messed something up both got injured this week. Ty Detmers and Brad Keller. Anyway, so it actually worked out for me. Joaquin Soria is back in Arizona. Nelson Cruz is back in Tampa Bay. Nelson Cruz is actually playing a little bit of first base because they're trying to figure out a way to keep him in the games in the playoffs, especially if they make the World Series where there is no DH for a portion of those games. Akil Baddoo, who we've talked about all year long, is back. Dylan Carlson's back in St. Louis, though he's not top of the lineup. Kyle Tucker's back in Houston. Francisco Lindor is back in New York. Julio Urias is back in Lindor. I was up a second. It's like not really good at expressing my feelings, but Lindor returned, and I cut him. I had this perplexity. The guys, when my shortstops got hurt, Seager and Lindor, the guys that I got in their place, Thomas and Brandon Crawford, have been so good that I don't know what Lindor can do over a month that can make that big of a difference. I still think he's a good player. I still will draft him next year, hopefully at a pretty good discount because of the bad year he had this year, and like he's playing in a stadium in New York that's not that good for hitters. But that's what I go. As far as injuries goes, last night we saw John Gray, the pitcher for Colorado, leave with a forearm strain, and Toronto's third baseman Santiago Espinal for deep legs with a hip flexor problem. People were out last night. Chris Bryant sat out. He left in the first game of Friday with side tightness. He did get an MRI on Saturday and came back clean, so he was available off the bench yesterday. Maybe he's starting today, maybe he's not. I haven't checked the lineups yet today. In Miami, Louis Brinson has missed the past games nursing a sore thumb. And Brian De La Cruz has shifted to center field, which adds to his usefulness. And Kansas City, the first baseman, Carlos Santana, king of the walks, was scratched Saturday with hip soreness. To the true IL, we lost a number of players this week, though it wasn't that bad. Andrew Miller has a left foot blister. Jake Fairley of Seattle has a right shoulder inflammation. David Boat of Chicago stepped on a baseball and has a right ankle sprain. As we talked about, for more, Mitch Garver's lower back tightness is out for Minnesota. Brad Keller developed the right lance strain in his last outing. Philadelphia first baseman Reese Hoskins out with a left groin strain. Jack Flaherty, who just returned from a long IL stint, is back on the IL with right shoulder strain. TJ Antone, ditto, return, back on with a right forearm strain. Pittsburgh starting pitcher JT Brubaker has a right thumb strain. Tristan McKenzie, who just started to look like he was becoming a fantastic pitcher, is out with right shoulder fatigue, and the fatigue is something that could be 3 days. It could be the rest of the year. J-Man Choi, the first baseman for Tampa Bay, is out with left hamstring strain. Eduardo Escobar of Milwaukee is on the IL with a right hamstring strain. Houston outfielder Chas McCormick has a left hand strain. And Evan LaGroria, a favorite of ours, has a right hand contusion. And it's like he's good when he plays, just doesn't play enough. Guys that are called the COVIDians, the guys that are on the COVID list right now: Seth Brown of Oakland, Spencer Howard of Texas, Luke Williams of Philadelphia, Kiki Hernandez of Boston, Donovan Solano of San Francisco, Texas's pitcher Dane Dunning, and LA's Reed Detmers, who was the other pitcher I named before. Some good news: people that are not too far away is St. Louis pitcher Dakota Hudson is rehabbing in Palm Beach. Julian Merriweather is rehabbing in Buffalo. He's a Toronto relief pitcher. Aaron Savali, who was, when he went to the winningest pitcher in baseball, and one of the guys I saved in most of my ILs, he is rehabbing in Lake County. The Lake County Captains. Danny Santana of Boston is off to the Portland Sea Dogs. Early Korean signing Koi Arihara, who had a rocky start with the Rangers, is rehabbing in Round Rock, but he was just sort of figuring it out. He had like 2 good outings in a row, and he got hurt. Noah Syndergaard has moved up to the Brooklyn Cyclones, so he's close to home. Shouldn't be too long. Nico Goodwin of the Tigers is rehabbing in Toledo. Ramil Tapia is off to Albuquerque with the Isotopes to rehab. Albert Azale of the Iowa Cubs, and he should be pitching at the end of part of this week. Harold Ramirez, the consistent outfielder for Cleveland, is rehabbing in Lake County, along with who's the other guy? He's there with Aaron Savali. Detroit's catcher outfielder Eric Haase, as far as I find this year, he's in Toledo, getting ready to come back. Jose Urquidy will pitch next week. He's rehabbing in Sugarland with the Skeeters. Toronto's catcher Danny Jansen is off the Buffalo Bison. And New York Yankee pitcher Corey Kluber is off in Somerset. I still like Kluber just because he normally takes a couple games to warm up. I don't think there's a couple games. I will probably draft him late next year, but I don't know how useful they're. Call-ups this week, there were 5 recalls. Sorry, 4, because I wrote one twice. Kansas City recalled Edward Olivares. That's his 6th recall this year. Jaron Duran of Boston was recalled. Miami recalled pitcher Edwin Cabrera, who's got strikeout excitement, and he will probably be the biggest fab guy this week. I don't think he's worth it, but then again, if you really need it, you really need it. Tanner Houck of Boston was recalled again. He's a guy that gets sent up and set down, but now they're expanding rosters. Those guys should claim the roster spot for the rest of the year. Doesn't mean they'll play. Of those, I like Edward Olivares the most, Tanner Houck the second. People who are DFA'd, Atlanta DFA'd Delbert Monte, Pittsburgh DFA'd longtime player Gregory Polanco. He was actually outrighted. Keenan Middleton of Seattle was outrighted Tacoma. William Contreras of Atlanta, the catcher, he was DFA'd to Gwinnett. Colorado third baseman Josh Fuentes, famously the cousin of Nolan Arenado, option Albuquerque. Gavin Lux, the hot prospect. No room for him left on that Dodger roster with the acquisition. This is off to option Oklahoma City. The White Sox optioned catcher Zach Collins to the Charlotte Knights, which means Zebby Savala is probably going to be on their postseason roster. And the big one was that co-closer and a very good player for most of this year until they started cracking down on sticky stuff, on spider tack. James Karanchuk of Cleveland was optioned to Columbus. A few players were released this week. Detroit released pitcher Erasmo Ramirez, Philadelphia pitcher Chase Anderson was released, and third baseman in Baltimore Michael Franco was released. Michael Franco feels the kind of guy the Cubs will sign, and I'm going to hate that. Earlier the week, some players were released, and then they were signed. Asdrubal Gruber was released by Arizona, but signed by Cincinnati. Jared Dyson was released by Kansas City, but signed by Toronto. Sean Doolittle was released by Cincinnati and signed. Jared Dyson was signed by Toronto. Doolittle was signed by Seattle. There's something weird going on there in Cincinnati because they don't really want to pick a closer. And 2 guys that were really in their mix, Doolittle and Hembry, they just released them. Like, we don't care. I don't think they know what they're doing. That's the scary part. David Bell fancies himself as being a person that's paying attention to matchups exclusively, and he feels that that's better. And mathematically, it is better. But mathematically, in real life, are 2 different things sometimes. It causes great confusion on the team. Houston signed utility player and former Astro Marwin Gonzalez to a minor league deal. Cincinnati, even though they got rid of Embry and Doolittle, they signed Tommy Malone for some reason to do a minor league deal. Want to say anybody's in the chat room, I'm sorry, I'm ignoring it a little bit. I have a bad feeling because of some of the negative and 100% completely false talk about me that people are going to say things that I just don't want to see, and I'll get distracted by it. But we're here to talk baseball, and that's the way life is. Because at least for this hour and 15 minutes, I'm the king of the show, and I can do as I want. The worst that happens at the end of the thing, they'll say I don't want to do this anymore. But like I said, I'm pretty tight with these guys. It's like I was a fan of Lenny's 20 years ago, and I only got to know him about 8 years ago, and 3 years ago, with a part of a big project, I decided to sign on, and I did it because it's somebody I liked. Anyway, and we like each other. We've developed that, I believe. There's some serious respect. Anyway, let's start with the starting pitchers. In the shallow leagues, there's some decent names here. Of course, they're not the knockout names. And we have to preface this by saying that in the shallow leagues, there are going to be players that I'm not going to mention that might help you get through an injury. But the truth is, I'm looking for guys that actually can make some level of noticeable impact for the rest of the year. So these lists are going to be shorter. And so that last weekend will be for the rest of the season because you need a guy that does something, you know. And the guy that I really like, Daniel Lynch, is still on this list, still only 20% rostered in Yahoo. I really like him. Eliezer Hernandez, which we also talked about last week, 2 weeks ago, we talked about him, 50% rostered. He has a 3.6 ERA, 14 Ks in 15 innings. He's been back from this injury, and it's Miami where things go pretty well. Two new names on this is Nestor Cortes Jr. He's a New York pitcher. He pitches a lot of ground balls. He's running a 2.95 ERA. Whips just over 1, striking out one per inning. On a team that gets you wins, that could be an impact. If he maintains his spot in the roster, which, I do know they have players coming back, theoretically Severino and Kluber could change, but he could get you 2, maybe 3 wins the rest of the year. Carlos Hernandez of Kansas City has sort of emerged. He was a converted relief pitcher. As a starter, he's been good with a 2.41 ERA. The one thing that's kind of weird is that he's in 18 innings, he struck out 15. The one thing I really thought he was going to do, because he came from relief, he was a 10 strikeout, 10 K per 9 player, and he seemed to have lost that in order to maintain control and time, endurance. And I guess it's okay, but what you've seen is a sub 1 whip, and that's pretty good. Kansas City is not one to give you a lot of wins, though they are in a bad division where they can certainly beat the Twins. They can certainly beat even though Detroit and Cleveland are halfway, they could beat those teams too. So there could be some wins in there. And a Tarek Skubal of who we told you to drop about 6 weeks ago. I think 2 weeks ago we said we should start looking at picking him up. He had 10 strikeouts this last week. He's still only 48% rostered. And so that's a guy that can help you in strikeouts. So those are Cortez, Hernandez, Lynch, Skubal, and the other Hernandez. And the guy I like the most is Lynch. But I like Lynch, Hernandez, and Cortez the best of the 3. In the deeper leagues, Nestor Cortez is available in my NFBC league, and I'm probably going to make a substantial bid on him. Though he is 70% rostered there, I just thought I'd make that note. Some pitchers that could help you here. I think I put him in the notes. Yeah, I did in here, and I still do the scrub pitcher thing. Kyle Freeland's been pretty good of late. He's a Colorado pitcher, so I tend to stay away from him. But in the scrub pitchers, people that you should be able to get for $1, you can get Kyle Freeland this week. He's got 1 game versus Texas, and that should be a pretty good game. Like I said, and it's in Texas as opposed to Colorado. Ronaldo Lopez has had a pretty good 2 weeks later, but I'm not a believer in him. Eric Fetty, 3.18 ERA over his last 2 games with 14 Ks for 11. He has moments, but he hasn't put it really together at any straight thing. Tyler Widener of the Arizona falls in that category too. Let's get to the players that I actually have some level of confidence in. But I do like to go through everybody who's having a pretty good thing, and I'm saying to you, don't trust these numbers here, except for when the matchup works out. And like I said, actually, Eric Fetty I'm going to recommend because he's actually got a 2-start week where he's at the Mets once and home with the Mets twice. Those are 2 good starts. And Kyle Freeland there. And then I'll give you the other one. Alec Mills hit an 8-inning last start. He's got a game versus Pittsburgh. So those are 3 guys I'm going to recommend this week. And the guys you should be able to get for $1. Jay Hepson's coming over to St. Louis. He's 49% rostered in NFBC. He's got 2 wins. He's got a 2.0 ERA, a 1.15 ERA. And outside of the start of this year, he's always been he's been pretty good late in his career when he kind of discovered how to pitch. And that 6 ERA that he had in the American League was going to drop. Is it going to drop this much? I don't know. But whatever they're doing there in Seattle, he's going to be a big part of it. And I think he's completely rosterable, and you don't have to spend a lot of money on him because no one's going to go out of the way for Jay Happ. I had Brett Keller here. I had Rick Dietmer's here, 34% owned, but they're both in the IL. And so is Mike Volkanovich, who's on it with COVID, which brings you to Miles Mikolas is the second guy. So I like Happ. I like Miles Mikolas. He's building up innings. He pitched 4 innings his first game from his thing out, 5 in his second. His whip's a little bit high, but his ERA is good. He's striking out a little under 1 K per 9. But he's a guy that's formerly pitched almost 20 wins. has a little bit of a track record on a team that's pretty good. If J Happ can do well with St. Louis, there's no reason Miles Nicholas is. Though right now he needs to build up a little bit more. But give him another week, and he'll be getting you quality starts. And then Matt Manning of Texas. The other guys aren't that great. We got Matt Manning, Paul Blackburn, who Oakland seems to be able to pull guys out of their hat that do pretty well. He's had 2 decent starts when he's come in. He's 5% rostered. Griffin Jacks is probably my number 3. So that's all I'll go with the number 3 is Griffin Jacks. I know Griffin Jacks' ERA, if you look at it, is fairly high. He was just bombed for like 8 runs in Boston. But every other game that he's pitched better than you expected. A lot of 2-run games, decent strikeouts. I would probably go him 3rd. But these aren't guys that I really love. I do like Mikolas. There's reason to like Mikolas and Happ. These are the guys you consider. I would probably go with the scrub pitcher concept on pitching before I go with any of these other guys. And that's what I go. Just to go through last week, we picked Chris Bubich, who had a bad outing. Michael Fultonevich, who had no outing whatsoever. He goes out with COVID. And J Happ, who had a good outing. So we're 1 for 1. Our ERA in the year is 3.96. Our WHIP on the year is 115, and we're at just over 8.5 strikeouts per inning over 6 weeks. It's getting harder and harder to do this because, well, the pitchers that are getting these starts are not going very deep. So there's going to be good weeks and bad weeks. This week there wasn't a lot of choices. I only discarded about 3 things. This week, the 4 players I think have pretty good starts, and number 4 is literally number 4. Number 1, I like Kyle Freeland versus Texas. He'd be my first pick to get through 1 week. Number 2 would be Eric Fedde versus the Mets twice. Primarily because with 2 games out there, he'll probably pick up a win in one of those 2 games. And with 2 games, he'll probably pick up, he could get as many as 14 strikeouts in 2 games, 13, 12, but enough that's noticeable. Alec Mills is playing Pittsburgh for Chicago. If you remember last year, in the last month of the season, he had that no-hitter. He's the kind of guy that takes a while to get into his groove. But Fedde, Mills, Freeland, Jose Suarez pitches Saturday versus Texas. He'd be on number 4, but he's an alternate. And those are the guys there. So in this, I'm saying Happ. I'm saying Happ. I'm saying Mikolas. I'm saying that for this week, Fedde and Freeland, they're pretty good shots on this stuff for 1 week. And that's the thing. Let me get to the relief pitching, which is our world-famous closer report. And we'll go through this. We're trying to make it a little bit safer. There's been some real shakeup on the closer side. But the safe guys are San Diego's Mark Melanson, Milwaukee's Josh Hader, Houston's Ryan Presley, the Dodgers' Kenley Jansen, the Angels' Raciel Iglesias, Toronto's Jordan Romano, though Merriweather's lurking. Minnesota's Alex Colomé, Washington's Kyle Finnegan, St. Louis' Alex Reyes, and Arizona's Tyler Clippard, though he's been a little bit shaky, a little bit. There are a couple that are safe but troubled. New York, Aroldis Chapman got the save on Thursday, but he's struggling otherwise. And they gave a save to Wandy Peralta on Tuesday. I don't know if Aroldis has. It would seem to me that they should do something for him to get himself right before the playoffs start. So it wouldn't shock me if they put him on the IL for 10 days and let him pitch through in some rehab stuff, gain confidence or whatever he needs to do. In Atlanta, Will Smith was 1-1 this week, but he was saved on a long hit ball that was caught on the warning trick by Jace Peterson, who we haven't mentioned in a while. We still don't like the guy. He's been shaky, but he's the guy. Edwin Diaz is also shaky a lot, but he's 1-for-1 this week. And Trevor May is capable there and in waiting. And in Philadelphia is Ian Kennedy, who's a player that I have in a number of my teams. Hasn't been as effective in Philly, but they're still going with him. I just get a little nervous when a new player gets activated. Jose Alvarado got activated this week. These are the ones where there's been apparent changes, either to my classification or their actual closer themselves. In Cleveland, with the Karinchak optioning, Emmanuel Clase is their closer, and he really belongs in the top level of closers. He's not. Who do you say now? He's not Melanson, Alex Reyes, Josh Hader, but he's up there with the Kenley Jansens of the world. In Boston, it looks like Adam Avino has supplanted Matt Barnes. Matt Barnes, the last 2 saves they got, the 2 chances this week, back-to-back, both went to Ottavino, and he converted. So Ottavino is a literally must pick up if you need saves, and probably 85% of the people listening to this podcast would need saves at some level. In Tampa Bay, in their committee, it looks like they found the guy they're going to do more of, and that's all-star pitcher Andrew Kittridge, who got the 2 chances this week and converted both. And maybe they're trying to build up a idea of who's going to be their primary closer in the most important games when they're in the playoffs. Because, like I said, they're up by 5 in the division. And whereas they could be theoretically caught for first place, they still would have a really good shot of being there as a wild card. In Kansas City, they've given their last 2 saves to Scott Barlow, and no one else even with a chance. So Kansas City might be leaning more toward Scott Barlow. In Oakland, Lou Trevino has been shaky, whereas I had put him up to the situation where he was a safe pitcher because it seemed like he was getting 8 out of 10 chances, a really high percentage. Teichman and Romo are in play, and Romo got the last save on Saturday night. And in Colorado, there's been a complete change. Daniel Bard has been replaced by Carlos Estevez. I think Estevez actually has better stuff than Daniel Bard, but it's still a dangerous, ugly place to run your thing. If you're desperate for saves, you can grab Estevez, but I'd rather – you probably get Estevez for cheap. I'd rather spend 5 or 6 times that amount of money and get out of Vino, or 3 or 4 times that money and get Andrew Kittridge. Anyway, those are the changes there. The committees, Chicago has ruined 2 good closers, Liam Hendricks and Kimbrel, by switching back and forth. This week there were 2 chances. They both converted their chance. In Seattle, here's because these are guys that are available in a lot of leagues. Paul Sewald, Drew Steckenrider, they got to save a piece this week. I think Sewald's going to get a little more than Steckenrider, but it's going to be a fairly even split. Likewise, in Miami, Dylan Soros got to save this week. Bender didn't. And I think that Floro is more of the closer than I'd rather have Floro than Bender, but they're both going to get saves as they start going out. In Cincinnati, where they don't really care about us fantasy players or even about their pitchers, I don't get it. Well, Michael Gibbons blew a save. Michael Lenz is their best pitcher, but it could be Amir Garrett. It could be Lucas Sims. They have no clear closer. I remember hearing I went through the thing where John Smoltz was talking, and somebody asked him about being a closer, and he said that the year that he was a closer, that was the hardest thing he ever did. Not so much the pitching part, but the being mentally prepared to give everything you got on every day of everything. Like you had to, when you're a starting pitcher, you have to go on Tuesday. You got to go. This is my day. This is my day. This is my day. And then the next day you can go golfing. But when you're the closer, every day might be you. Now, somewhere in the 6th inning, you go, "Oh, we're up 9-2, or we're down 11-1," and you know that you're free. But it's every day you have to be on, and that's tough. And some people can't pull it off, and that's why a team usually goes with a single closer or at most 2. When you go with 4 or 5, that's a recipe for disaster in my mind. A team that does in Cincinnati is just going to screw that up. I would think I made the prediction that they might catch Milwaukee. That's the part that scares me, is their closer situation. San Francisco does a nice job on their mix. Jake McGee is a lefty, the better of the 2 pitchers. He will get about 60% of the saves. Tyler Rogers is a change of pace guy. He'll get about 40% of saves. They both got 1 this week. They're both decent plays. In Pittsburgh, David Bednar and Chris Stratton are developing into something along those lines. Not the best thing out there. In Texas, it looks like Spencer Patton's the guy. They've had no opportunities. Texas has been a situation where there have been very few opportunities all year long. Even when Ian Kennedy was there, he didn't have that many saves because there just weren't that many opportunities. Strangely enough, there were like 5 when he was on the IL, and they were all blown. I think Josh Sport's still in that mix. Cole Sulcer in Baltimore, he blew his only save chance last night. There's nobody on there that I really want. In Detroit, Greg Soto's got the last save. He's probably the guy you want the most out of the 3 guys that do their saving. But Fulmer got 1 a couple days before, and he'll be in that mix. And it wouldn't shock me for Jose Cicero to still get a save or 2. But Soto is actually the pitcher, the guy you want in that team. In Chicago, in a horrible situation, Rowan Wick, Cody Hoyer, Adam Morgan, Manny Rodriguez. Guess who got the save this week? There was a save? Yes, it was Adam Morgan. He's a guy we don't even care about. I'm a Chicago Cubs fan. The best pitcher there is Rowan Wick. There won't be many save opportunities, and when it comes up, you won't know who you'll get. So I would stay away from that. Which brings me to the recommendations. And these recommendations kind of flow through. In the deep leagues, in NFPC, Adam Havino is 40% rostered. Drew Steckenrider is 32% rostered. Andrew Kittridge is 70% rostered. There's a chance this week that you can pick up a player that could get you 7 to 10 saves the rest of the year. And those are the names. There's also Scott Barlow, Cal Finnegan in the shallower leagues like Yahoo. Scott Barlow's 37% rostered. Cal Finnegan's 43% rostered. Tyler Clippard's 20% rostered. Like I said, he's shaky, but he's got 3 saves already. Dylan Floro is 18% rostered. David Bednar is 19% rostered. And Adam Avino is probably the number one guy there. He's 22% rostered. Because there's a chance he is really a talented pitcher, even though the numbers aren't exactly where they were. He's shown that in the past. And Boston will win enough to get things going. So Ottavino is the big one, but there are saves on the waiver wire. Those are the names: Barlow, Finnegan, Clippard, Floro, Bednar. In the deeper leagues, you also have second writer in Kittridge. Kittridge is a good one. If you need saves, they're out there. Go get them. Don't bid $6 if you need them. Bid $25. I'm picking them out of 1,000. If you're in a 100 league and you're thinking, I'll give 5 for this guy, you might have to give 13 because you want the guy. I would do it for Ottavino, maybe not for the other ones. Kittridge would probably do it too. And those are the relief pitchers, which puts us at, I always check 40 minutes. Yeah, that's about right. We get the outfield. And, there's less going on in these things. So these won't be long. And I'm not going to recommend as many players in the past. I tend to talk about all the players that might be worthwhile. Pitchers are a different story. These are only guys that I would consider rostering in a league. Could somebody I don't mention have a better week than these guys? Sure, but these are the guys that I feel most comfortable in recommending because I think they're most consistently do the thing. In the outfield, in Los Angeles, Joe Adell has fallen to 8th or 9th in the lineup. He's still playing, but he's batting at the very end. In Houston, Kyle Tucker returned, and they slotted him to the 7th spot. Houston, Chas McCormick's injury means Jake Myers is the center fielder. In Oakland, Piscotty's injured. Seth Brown's optioned. The opposition is now a split between Tony Kemp and Chad Pinder. There's some liking of Kemp for a little bit of stolen bases, but I would rather have somebody who plays all the time, and there are those guys available. In Atlanta, Eddie Rosario has been activated, but he hasn't started the last 2 games. The question is how they're going to play the 4th outfielder. Eddie Rosario's rehab stint was he got through it healthy, he fielded fine, but he hit like 083 versus minor league pitching. And I'm sure that has something to do with the fact that he needs to build some confidence somewhere. He did come in for a pinch hit and didn't do anything with it. Dylan Carlson isn't batting first since he returned. They've given the first base third. They're keeping with Tommy Edman. He's been batting 6th, though he does move up. He has moved up to batting 2nd versus left-handed pitchers. Oscar Mercado and Daniel Johnson are still splitting time fairly evenly. I like Johnson more, but they're both playing fairly. They're actually both playing pretty decently in split time, which might keep them in split time. Jake Fairley went to the IL, which brings recently demoted Dylan Moore back into the outfield. He's an interesting character because he's hitting 200 with a decent home run total and a decent stolen base total, and he is a UCF graduate. Well, he'll be watching UCF play Boise State on Thursday along with me, not actually with me, but with me in spirit. In Washington, Victor Robles, they put back the top lineup, even though he's not hitting. I still think that there's a chance they might switch over to Lane Thomas, but any of these teams that are out of it are going to look at these players and say, is there something there? And if they were to bench Robles, they wouldn't be able to say for effects or something there. The fact that they're betting Robles first doesn't bode well for his future. I think they're pretty happy with what they found in Hernandez. I know he's a little bit of an older rookie, but he can bridge the gap until they get their next guy in place. Anyway, in San Diego, Tommy Pham is the odd man out in their outfield with Tatis out there. Strangely enough, Andrew McCutchen of Pittsburgh has only started 2 of the last 6 games, and they're opting for playing Travis Jankowski in center field if he continues playing. Jankowski is a decent source of speed and steals. Pittsburgh, Ben Gamble is their new leadoff hitter. That has some value at some level. They do change everything. In Texas, they've activated Leos Taveras, who could steal some bases. They put him in the first game as leadoff. He didn't. I think he struck out 3 times out of 5 or something. Now he's batting at the very bottom of the lineup. I'm not going to give him Leos Taveras long term. I think he might have a good career, but this year has been really tough on him, and I don't expect that much from the rest of the year, except for possibly the 5 or 6 steals with an average drag, with a batting average drag on your team. So Cincinnati, despite having tons of options for the outfield, with Mauricio Aquino hitting 100, Shogaki Yama. The guy playing left field for him is Max Schrock. Kansas City pulled up Edward Olivares, and I could see him supplanting Ryan O'Hearn in the outfield. Akil Baddoo is back and batting leadoff, as per what he's doing all season long. The one bad thing is, since the return, he isn't getting a chance to hit versus lefties, but that's fine. And Minnesota has finally pulled Brent Rooker out with Byron Buxton return, and Buxton is back in the top lineup, either batting first or second. Which brings me to, there's a fair amount of these outfielders that might do something for you. I mean, Patrick Wisdom qualifies in Yahoo, qualifies at first base, third base, and outfield, and he hit, 7 home runs this week, 7 home runs last 2 weeks, including 2 back-to-back 2 home run games. Ian Happ is starting to hit. He plays also second base. Ian Happ is hitting with the Cubs. Brandon Marsh, he's 20 for the last 47. Only 1 home run there, but he's showing more to the Angels than Joe Adell is. And as I said, I always name the ones that I'm not as thrilled about first, because I'm not giving them a recommendation. I'm just saying there's a possibility there. That might be all you have. I wouldn't kick those guys out, but the other guys like more. Odubel Herrera, he's been back, played 2 weeks, got 4 home runs at 361. I don't know how he's only rostered 8% in Yahoo leagues. As I said a couple weeks ago that Connor Joe is better than CJ Cron. Connor Joe has been taking the places of Ramil Tapia. It wouldn't shock me if Connor Joe got to play some outfield plus play first base in all their away games, because CJ Cron is hitting like $1.30 or something on the away games. Got one of the worst splits you'll ever see, home versus away. At home, he's actually a decent player. The guy I really like is Jake Myers. I'm going to put him on the recognition list. I wish I'd recommended him last week. He's got all the tools. He can play center field. He's been hitting 333 since he's been called up with 803 OPS. He's only stolen 1 base, but he has a StatCast measured 97th percentile sprint speed. So there's stuff there. He's stolen the minors a little bit. I think he's a better player than Jazz McCormick. When McCormick out, he's a guy there. And I'm going to be bidding on Myers in the deep league. That's for certain. Corey Dickerson of Toronto, I like. He's 3% rostered in Yahoo. He's 11 for the last 36 with 3 home runs. He actually fits their mix better than the others. As I say with these teams that have a lot of free swingers that hit well, like Bichette and Biggio, and Vlad is a better hitter than most as far as plate discipline. But Teoscar Hernandez, Dickerson is a disciplined plate. The guy with a disciplined plate approach, and you need a couple of those guys in that mix to keep that team winning. And I think that Dickerson's going to play more than anyone thinks. You got Yadiel Hernandez and Washington Frank Schwindel, who I still think is really good, even though the power's tapered off a little bit. He's only hit like 2 home runs the last 2 weeks, but he's still hitting 300. He's been second on lineup when they do score. He's a big part of it. I think Nick Solak is the big guy. He's sort of been forgotten. He had an awesome start of the year, then he fell off the cliff and wound up getting sent down. He was hitting about 355 in the minors. Since he's been back, he's hitting 360 with a home run and stolen base. He has capacity to steal bases very efficiently, where he doesn't get caught much. And he looks like he's hot. And he looks like I could stay hot for about a month, and that's all you got left. He's a guy I will also be targeting. And then Brandon Belt, 26%. We always talk about him. In the deeper leagues, Yadiel Hernandez is 54% rostered. Corey Dickerson, 56. Jake Myers, 54. Those 3 guys are in the deeper. Odo Herrera is at 49. That's a guy that should be picked up. The rest of these guys, Jace Peterson has done everything that's ever been asked by the Milwaukee Brewers, and he's actually hit 5 home runs on the year, stole 8 bases on the year, hitting 270 with his 390 on base percentage. He qualifies in FBC at first base, second base, and outfield. Qualifies even more in Yahoo. There's a guy that should be picked up. What was it that they just did? Edward Escobar going to the IL frees up spot for him. He's playing third base now. Played first base before when Castellanos stunk and Vogelbach was injured. Other guys, Brian De La Cruz. We talked about 2.5 weeks ago said that was an interesting player. He's actually doing a little better than I ever expected. He's hitting 355 with the Marlins. It's a good park for kind of guy that sprays the ball the way he does. He does have 2 home runs, 1 stolen base, and just 93 at bats. He's definitely a player that you should pick up if you need batting average help. And Phil Gosselin is the starting third baseman for the Los Angeles Angels. In the last 2 weeks, he's hit nearly 3 home runs, also with 2 home runs and a stolen base. Lane Thomas, there's a couple guys that aren't really the starters, but are worth looking at in these leagues, like Lane Thomas, who's behind Robles, Lars Nootbaar in St. Louis, Anthony Alford in Pittsburgh, with Polanco down. He's a guy that I've always liked. He hasn't really put it together. He falls in that Lewis Brinson, Daniel Johnson, Akil Mole just needs to put it together. If I were gambling on a guy in Pittsburgh, I would gamble on Yoshi Tsugo. I know that the stuff there isn't that great. I know he's hit 4 home runs in 2 weeks. He's hitting 300. But the background stuff there is that this is a guy that dominated Japan, came over at the wrong time to a team that just screws with players. The Rays never really fit in there. Got traded to the Dodgers where they never really needed him. I was hoping for the best fresh air. This is the fresh air that he could need. And this is the kind of guy you pick up if you need something. If you need something to happen, because odds are good whoever you pick up isn't going to do that much the rest of the season. But there is a chance, an outside chance, that this guy hits 10 home runs the rest of the year. Outside chance. He might hit 7, might hit 8. And that's the kind of thing that can make a difference. And that's what we're looking for at this point, is things that can make a difference on your team. What are the odds of that happening? Maybe 1 in 5. But they're still there. Whereas if you were picking up a Lars Nootbaar, it's a healthy snack, but it's not going to give you those things. Michael Chavis, similarly, is getting a fresh start in Pittsburgh, playing second base for them. Surprisingly, he's only hit 1 home run for them, but he is hitting 364, and his strikeouts are down. They're still in the high 20s, but he was striking out almost 41% of the time. Ben Gamel has been slumping of late, but he's also in Pittsburgh, and there might be something there. He's their leadoff hitter. Those are the guys there. So in the outfield, the guys I'm saying that should be rostered are Odubel Herrera, Jake Myers, Corey Dickerson, Yadier Hernandez, Frank Schwindel, Nick Zolak. And in the deeper league, some of these guys are available, but also Brian De La Cruz. And I would take a chance on Jace Peterson or Yoshi Tsugo. Off to second. Actually, I was supposed to do. I put these in the wrong order. First base, third base was come first. So we're up at middle infield, 32. There's not a lot here to talk about because these things are much shorter than outfield. Outfield takes a lot of space. Notes at first base. Philadelphia, Brad Miller is the first baseman with Bohm to the mind. Is the first baseman with. He's the first baseman with Hoskins to the injured reserve. In Tampa Bay, Jordan Luplow is getting playing time at first base with Troy out. And he's played his 7th game so far. In Boston, the Red Sox are somehow serious about playing Travis Shaw at first base over Bobby Dahlbeck. I don't get it. When Dahlbeck was bad, he was as good as the typical Travis Shaw line. At third base, Alex Bregman returned and is batting 6th with minimal fanfare. Houston's Almeida Diaz, who we talked about playing, has played 2 or 3 games even with Tucker and Bregman back. They're finding ways to get in the lineup. Milwaukee's Edward Escobar's injury makes way for Jace Peterson to be their regular third baseman. So you have time in Arizona. Escobar and Cabrera are gone. Josh Ramirez is starting third baseman. I don't think he has much value fantasy-wise. I wish they weren't doing this because I like both players, but in New York, Villar and J.D. Davis are splitting time. That's why neither of them recommended, just because of the time thing. Though Villar is a guy that can always steal you some bases. In Baltimore, Kevin Gutierrez is the new third baseman with the waiving of Michael Franco. In Philadelphia, Ronald Tornez, who filled in for Didi Gregorius at shortstop, has been moved over to third base with the send down of Bohm, so he's playing alongside Didi Gregorius. In Tampa Bay, Andy Diaz is back in the mix with starts in the 67 games, admittedly at different positions, third and first. In Cincinnati, not only is Eugenio started benched, but they signed Asdrubal Cabrera, who plays the same positions. So I'm wondering if they're really out on Eugenio Suarez. Recommendations are pretty simple on this. In the shallow leagues, at first base, Bobby Dahlbeck's available. Colin Moran, we talked about a great thing. He's hitting 310. He's been back, kind of thing, batting cleanup for a thing. He's a guy that before the season I said was an outside shot of 30 home runs. Missed a number of times, but he's still that same player. And Frank Schwindel of the Cubs, still hitting 319. Is there? Those guys are rostered at 17, 10, and 35 league. At third base, Patrick Wisdom. Actually, Patrick would qualify at first base. You can put him either way. In Yahoo, 38% of things. Nick Solak is second base, third base, and outfield. He fits in this for the same reason we said before. Colin Moran also qualifies at third base, and Almeida Diaz qualifies third base. So what I'm telling you is Colin Moran, Frank Schwindel are guys you should pick up. Nick Solak. Those are the guys I really like. These other guys are pretty good. In the deep leagues, Colin Moran is rostered in 54% of leagues. He didn't fit our thing, but he might be available in your league. That's really there. We have Yoshi Tsutsugo comes up again. He's 12% rostered. Phil Gosselin, 7% rostered. Tommy Lacella, 49% rostered. Brad Miller, 37% rostered. Jace Peterson, 20% rostered. Of that group, I like Peterson the most and the upside of Tsutsugo and theoretically Tommy Lacella. Tommy Lacella has played in the six consecutive games for the Giants. The Giants have been screwing around with their rosters a lot, but they had a situation where Solano went COVID and Belt went on bereavement, so their lineup stabilized for a few days, and it was good for them and for us. At third base, Matt Duffy, who's playing shortstop for the Cubs, qualifies at third base. You know, he'll hit you 300. He has mild stolen base for 10. Andy Ibanez, who we talked about for a few weeks, has really come around, hit 467 in the last 2 weeks. I like him. I like Yanni Hernandez still. The second base eligible with stolen base at 258. So I would recommend Yanni Hernandez and Andy Ibanez. Admittedly, these guys aren't that great of recommendations. Those guys I prefer. There are players that can do things for you. And then we jump over to shortstop. In shallow leagues, Josh Rojas is 44% rostered. Jonathan Villar, 34%. Andrew Velasquez, 2%. Edmundo Sosa, 1%. Those are the four names. Edmundo Sosa seems to have supplanted. Well, I probably should do this. The notes on that. That's in my freaking notes. In Milwaukee, William Davis returned Saturday after 3 days out with injury. In St. Louis, Edmundo Sosa started passing as a shortstop with Paul DeJong moving to the bench. New York's Francisco Lindor returned to lineup batting third mostly, and like I said, I did cut him this week because I had better options. Tommy Edman is still bad at leadoff with Carlson's return. He had second base. Cleveland's Andres Jimenez and Owen Miller are pretty evenly splitting time at second. We're making both of them worthless. Chicago's Matt Duffy is starting at second base with Boat out. Baltimore's Jorge Mateo, who I like, has played his 10th game at second base, though he's above the 50 line in those leagues. Pittsburgh sent Hoy Park to the minors, so that experiment is over. Michael Chavez has taken his place and has the same sort of upside, though it's mostly power. And the Texas Nick Zolak is getting regular playing time since the recall, hitting 360. So, as we said, in the deep leagues, Josh Rojas, Jonathan Villar, Andrew Velasquez. Velasquez is mostly a speed play, but he seems to really love playing the game. I know that people are waiting for Gleyber Torres to get back, but they've been a better team with him as their shortstop. He can also play a little outfield. So I feel that if you pick him up, he might get supplanted as their shortstop, but he'll still be a guy that gets into the game. And with the fact that he's going to steal some bases, that makes what you're getting him for is still going to be valid. At second base, we have the rebirth of Ian Happ, Odubel Herrera, Colton Wong, who we talked about for weeks. Like, I don't understand why this guy is only 40% rostered. He's a top 10 second baseman. Just is. Then you have Josh Ross at 44% qualifies there. Colin Moran, strangely, qualifies at second base for Pittsburgh in Yahoo. In the deep leagues, all right, here we go. Edmundo Sosa for the season, he has 4 home runs, 3 stolen bases, hitting 281 with a 360 on base percentage. I know it's over 200 bats, so it's not going to be world beating numbers. You're talking about a guy that's on pace for, what is that, like 12 home runs and 10 steals. But you know, it's better than what you're getting out of DeJong. If you're desperate, you're desperate. Ramon Urias of Baltimore has hit pretty well of late. And Andrew Velasquez is hitting 270 since his call-up with 3 steals, and that's something there. At second base, we're going to bring back the name Andy Ibanez. Ramon Urias also qualifies there. Tommy Lacella also qualifies at second base. Edmundo Sosa also qualifies at second base. Yanni Hernandez also qualifies at second base. Michael Chavez also qualifies at first and second base. And Jace Peterson also does. I like Peterson the most of this grouping, though. The upside of the Michael Chavez Jr. There's some decent little players there, not world beaters, but there are things to go from there. And that is the middle infield portion of our day, and we're right at an hour. I'm going to spend way too much time on catchers. I'm going to spend about 3 minutes on it. In the shallow leagues, the most interesting thing is, well, Travis Darnode in Yahoo is only rostered 47% of leagues. I think that should be a little bit higher. The most interesting are the players that qualify. Oh, and Alexander Hurk is this batting. He's batting cleanup sometimes for Toronto is only 5% rostered. Is Dalton Varsho, who also plays outfield. He's got 36 at bats in the last 6 games with 3 home runs. And Jorge Alfaro, 8% rostered, has 1 run, 2 stolen bases, and 43 at bats in the outfield. You know, those guys bat too much in these leagues where they qualify and just to not be rostered. You know, there aren't that many good catchers as if there. The other guy that I'd want would be Elias Diaz, who over the last 3 at bats has got 10 hits and 2 home runs. Has half his games left in cores. There in the deep leagues, Riley Adams has been hot. I saw somebody say, should I drop Armando Tavares for Riley Adams to give you some idea how much they think about that hot start? I don't think that much about him. That being said, he's one of the guys I'm thinking about replacing Mitch Garver with, but I'm positive. Jose Trevino is going to play more with Texas because the other guy was injured. And I can't remember who it is. So Jonathan Heim got hurt. Just when he's played, he's shown that he can hit for slightly above average, and a home run or 2. So he just won't hurt you on that part. Cal Raleigh is still available in Chicago. It looks like Rob Citrinos is their catcher more often than Romine. And that guy has hit 20 home runs in a season. Might do something there. Yeah, Dalton Varsho started 7 of the last 8 games, 3 of them at catcher. And the last guy is Thomas Nido, who's returned to be the primary starter. I'm literally thinking that Nido's the best pick in that grouping. You know, because he's hit when he's filled in, and McCann is still out. So that's the way that goes. So that's my show at about an hour. That's fine. You know, my recommendations go over some of the names that I went through there, like Frank Schwindel, Nick Sola, Colin Moran, Brandon Belt, Odubel Herrera, Yadiel Hernandez, Jake Myers, Corey Dickerson, Brian De La Cruz. On the pitching side, there was Nestor Cortez, Daniel Lynch, Elias Hernandez, Carlos Hernandez, Jay Happ, and a couple guys for just the one start were Fetty and Freeland for 1 start picks. There are actual saves out there. Tavino's a must. The other guys I named, I'm going to go through all of them. Lenny's on at 9 a.m. on Monday through Friday with a live interactive chat room. George on night 6:30 p.m. He's with the Road Imbeciles. He said that he's going to discuss Aristophanes, which means it'll be pretty deep. I hope I can make that, but I'm not certain. I probably will get in there about 6:50. Andrea's on Sunday morning with Lenny at 9 o'clock. And on the roundtable on Monday, though, I normally do the roundtable. I'm not going to do the roundtable this Monday for reasons explained in the fact that I am right now not as excited about doing this as I have been in the past. The advice is still good. I still feel a bond with my listeners that I need to do this for them. And, and like I said, you can reach me at Twitter at Urban Baboon or Urban Baboon at gmail.com. I do interact with players on there. The National League average leader is Trey Turner, batting .323. The Michael Brown leads the American League at .318. Cal Hendricks leads the National League in wins with 14. Actually, he's tied with Julio Urias. And Garrett Cole in the American League is the American leader with 13. And these are important stats. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. I appreciate you all being here, all 3 or 4 of you. Oh, yeah, some comments. Let's see what the comments are. Doug! I added the show. William. Here's a guy. Like, this is the thing here. Like, yeah, I know that only about 3 dozen people listen to me every week. And I've done, but you get a thing like this. You are the best. I appreciate your work. Thank you. And that just makes you feel like you did something good. And I purposely did this because I actually realized how much work this is for 30, 40 people. And what I am doing is I am going through the waiver wire for myself. And I've gotten better at it because I'm codifying the process that went through. These are things that I did, a lot of it subconsciously, like I like this guy, I don't like this guy. And I've been actually really busy. And I've been really, really dominating my weekend waiver pickups. I have leagues where I have monster players out, and I'm still in it because I know more about what's available and who's what because I review every game briefly. I review every box score. I wish I could review the pitchers more, but the total is fine. It's easier to if you go like 1 week back, you'll see most people's last start. But I do appreciate people saying thanks. You're the best. So William E, you just made my day. And with that, I'll just say good afternoon. I wish you luck, unless you're playing me.